Good evening. I'm Doreen Binder, co-president of the League of Women Voters of Portland, and I'm here along with Holly Schmidt of the Interfaith Alliance on Poverty. And we would both like to welcome you to our candidate forum this evening. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan organization that works to help citizens make informed choices in elections. We do not endorse candidates or political parties, but rather we give voters the information they need to select a candidate. Membership information is available on our website and at the table at the back of the room, as is information on our co-sponsor, the Interfaith Alliance on Poverty. These forums are brought to you by the League of Women Voters of Portland through their education fund and through generous support from Metro East Community Media, Multnomah Bar Foundation, Paloma Clothing, Sarah Fruing Fund, and the Weiss Foundation. And in addition, we would like to thank Multnomah County for the use of this room. If you have not yet registered to vote, the last day to do so will be April 24th. You can contact the county elections office or register online through the Secretary of State. Ballots will be mailed out beginning on April 27th. And now I have the honor of introducing Holly Schmidt from the Interfaith Alliance on Poverty.
Thank you. I am Holly Schmidt, a member of the Interfaith Alliance on Poverty. We are 13 faith-based congregations in Portland, working together to address the root causes and systems that perpetuate the problem of homelessness and poverty. Change almost always begins with having effective, committed political leadership. And to that end, we have joined with the League of Women Voters to sponsor the candidate forum tonight and the 1 and 2 weeks on April 24th. Thank you.
This is the forum for Portland Commissioner position number 2. This session will last approximately 45 minutes. I am your moderator. Again, I'm Leslie Moorhead. Thank you all for being here. 3 of the 4 candidates for Portland City Commissioner position number 2 are with us this evening of Civil Discourse: Julia DeGraw, Philip Wolf, and Nick Fish. I will switch the responder for each round so that candidates take turns answering first. The candidates will have 1 minute to respond. Timekeepers facing the candidates will signal a 15-second warning and then a stop when each speaker's time has expired. Now we will begin with the candidates' opening statements. Ms. DeGraw first.
All right, thank you so much for having me, and thank you all for coming out today for this event. Again, my name is Julia DeGraw, and I'm a candidate for Portland City Council position 2, and I'm running for Portland City Council because it is past time for the city to prioritize the needs of people over developer profits, corporate interests, and complacent politicians. I live in Southeast Portland, east of 82nd Avenue, and we have a complete lack of representation. Right now, all but one city commissioner lives in Southwest Portland, and the other one lives in Northeast Portland. If I were elected tomorrow, I would be the only commissioner from Southeast Portland, and the only one who lives east of Cesar Chavez Boulevard. That's why I'm running on a platform of pushing for city council districts where we can elect folks from every part of the city and have them be responsible to their constituents. I am also have a track record of running on behalf of people, having been the lead organizer in the 9-year fight to stop a Nestle water bottling facility from being built in the Columbia River Gorge to bottle our public water. And I plan to take that same kind of tenacity to City Hall for all of you. Thank you.
Mr. Wolf, your opening statement.
Hello, everyone. My name is Philip J. Wolf. I'm standing because I'm using American Sign Language, and I do not want to hit the mic. I want to make sure I have lots of room to communicate with you all. I'm running for City Council position number 2. Currently in City Hall, and I'd like to ask you to really look at City Hall and what does representation mean, and what do we have currently? For a long time, we have been underrepresented, underserved, and that needs to change. Right now, there is no true representation for LGBTQ individuals, no representation for the disabled community, and that is largely concerning to me. I see an opportunity where I can take a step forward and really show who I am. I think I am a perfect candidate to represent. I am deaf, I am gay, I grew up with a lot of oppression and discrimination. Because of being deaf and gay, both of those characteristics have given me an opportunity to have a life experience, and I think that I will provide more of a balance to City Council. I want to focus on improving police reform, homelessness, and social disparities. There are many issues that I would like to address. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Fish, your opening statement.
Hello, thanks to the League for organizing this forum. I'm Nick Fish. I'm running for re-election on my record of working with the community to solve tough problems. Let me share with you some examples. I work with the auditor to increase transparency and accountability in government. I partnered with the county chair and the mayor to boost the supply of permanent supportive housing, a proven tool to end chronic homelessness. I am working with Commissioner Fritz to bring new parks to East Portland, and I have worked tirelessly to reform our utilities and restore public trust. Our city faces big challenges, including an administration in Washington that is hostile to our values. I've spent my life fighting for justice, making sure everyone is treated fairly. I offer the progressive values, experience, and deep relationships in our community to move our city forward. Thank you.
Now we will proceed to our first question. Portland has a severe shortage of housing units affordable to our lowest income residents, a significant factor in the homeless crisis. How would you address the shortfall? Mr. Wolf, you're first.
Thank you. My name is Philip Wolf again, running for City Council position number 2. I live in Northwest, and there are several reasons why I chose that area to live. First of all, it is accessible to public transportation in that area, and that is a high need for me. I don't own a car. I've also had a hard time finding a job due to discrimination to my deafness. I live in an apartment that is low income, and I consider myself someone who is in poverty. I do receive as a disability, SSI, and I noticed that there is such a disparity in what I can afford, and budgeting is a challenge for me. It's something that really affects my life. From that personal experience, I've learned a lot. And I know there's many things that need to be addressed, not just one specific issue, but there's a whole host of issues. For example, we need to solve the housing crisis. We need to establish rent control to stop this extreme disparity in renter costs. As far as taxes, we need to focus on prioritizing where our money is going for taxpayers in order so things can be affordable. Thank you.
Mr. Fish.
So I've spent a lifetime working on affordable housing issues, and my priorities have always been low-income families, older adults, and the disabled. Let me tell you first what I've done. I was a champion for getting the legislature to lift the preemption on inclusionary housing. I was one of the leaders of the bond effort that resulted in over $250 million of new resources in our community. I created the Portland Housing Bureau, focusing its mission and resources on the most vulnerable in our community. And I've supported record funding for the Joint Office of Homeless Services. Let's talk about what we have to do going forward. I work with Chloe Udaly on renter relocation assistance, but we have to do more. We have to get the state legislature to lift the preemption on our right to regulate no-cause evictions and to consider rent stabilization. And we need Metro to step up for the first time. There is a great conversation going on about a Metro bond. The city of Portland cannot, and the county of Multnomah cannot solve the region's problem. It is time for Metro to step up. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. DeGraw.
I would actually say that having Chloe Udaly on council is what really led to the leadership of getting renter relocation done. That was a good idea. It was a good idea 10 years ago. I think if we had a more representative form of government where folks were elected and represented the people that they were elected by, that we would get results like that on a more regular basis. So I really commend Chloe's leadership on that specific issue. And I think that we need more people on council who are willing to take visionary, bold moves to really address these big problems we're all facing. Part of that includes looking outside of the developer box when it comes to developing, when it comes to building permanently affordable housing. We need to be looking at things like community land trusts, and we need to look at preserving existing affordability, especially before we do transportation projects. You know, we build a MAX line out to Milwaukee, and all the affordability just disappears almost overnight, right? We need to be building affordable housing and preserving affordability as we develop to make sure that folks aren't being displaced. This is something we should have been doing all along, but it's definitely something we must be doing as we move forward. And of course, there's much more I have on this,
Thank
but
you.
we only have 1 minute.
Thank you. Now we're on to question number 2. In addition to housing, what else will you do to move the dial to decrease poverty? Mr. Fish, you're first.
Well, of course, poverty is the underlying problem, and what we focus on is the symptoms. People on our streets, people without affordable housing, people with inadequate education, the growing gap between rich and poor. So let's talk about how we have a comprehensive plan to address poverty in our country. Of course, it starts with a quality education, and we have to reduce the educational disparities in our community. It cannot be that if you get an education west of 82nd, that you have more opportunities than kids that are east of 82nd. The City of Portland, in its charter, has not one reference to education. But I think we can all agree that the great equalizer in our society is education. My wife is the first woman on her mother's side of the family to go to high school. Today, she's a professor of history at Portland State, and the reason we're in Oregon. And education is the ticket out of poverty to opportunity.
Thank you. Ms. DeGraw.
I also agree that education is crucially important to the success of our communities, and this is one of the reasons why I've proposed that during this era in which we have a booming economy, that we should have basic rights and social services tax. I've recently had a press conference on this, but that's the brass tax, and with the additional revenue, not only can we increase services to folks who need it the most, which will help out with poverty, but I'm very interested in funding fully funded, public, high-quality preschool for everyone in the city, because there are amazing outcomes when children have access to high-quality preschool. They tend to stay in their communities, they tend to stay out of jail, they tend to end up getting jobs in their communities. The outcomes are stupendous, and if we invest in our children now, we will have a much brighter future. And I also support getting more of the trades built into our schools, having a pipeline from our high schools into the trades, especially STEM as well. We need people going into the trades, able to start apprenticeship programs right out of high school.
Thank you very much. Mr. Wolf.
Thank you. I agree with both Nick Fish and Julia DeGraw. Education is really important. I was the first person in my entire family to achieve a high school diploma. I was a family of 14 children. My grandparents had 14 children, and many of them continued to drop out of high school. Myself, as a deaf individual, that was a high chance that I would as well. In order to reduce poverty, as I said before, rent control is really important. We need to stop the cost of rent from increasing in this city. At the same time, we also need to increase the minimum wage. Currently, our minimum wage isn't able to support the cost of living in our city, and that increases the disparities that we see. We need to increase a minimum wage to $20 an hour or more. Transportation needs to be free and accessible. It is ridiculous for an individual to have to pay to use public transportation in order to access services. It costs hundreds of dollars for an individual to access public transportation. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we go on to question number 3. Give us a specific example of a case when you compromised as part of a group, and a specific example when you did not compromise. Mr. Fish.
Didn't I take the last one? But I'm happy to do it again. So an example of when I've compromised and when I've not compromised. So first, let me give you my framework. I had the great honor of working for Congressman Barney Frank when he was in service, and he said to me, there are some things we never compromise on. Those are our core values. There are other things we compromise on in order to achieve justice and move the ball. So I will never compromise on issues like a woman's right to choose, on making sure that gays and lesbians have full equality, in helping to lift up the voices of people without power in our community and holding people accountable. Those are core values I will not compromise. But I will work with my colleagues and compromise on issues if it moves the ball and leads us to measurable progress. One of the things about a commission-style form of government is, as part of my job, is to know what each of my colleagues cares about and to every day try to help them be successful. And to be successful in this job, you have to be collaborative, which often means compromise.
Thank you. Mr. Wolf.
Hello. Compromising is always a sensitive situation. In politics, it's important that we recognize that. I will not compromise if there is any decision that violates a person's basic human rights. I will use my male white privilege in order to empower vulnerable communities and populations. I will not compromise if that would go against groups of individuals. That's one of the strong values that I hold. And I want to make sure that people's voices are heard. However, as far as deliberation, discussion, it's important to engage with an open mind and an open heart and to speak honestly, to not engage in anything that is other than transparency. It is important for that to occur, for people to make agreements and to move forward progressively. I'm willing to sit down with people to figure out where we can see eye to eye, to where we can brainstorm and come together to implement solutions for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. DeGraw.
So as the lead organizer in the campaign to keep Nestle from bottling public water in the Columbia River Gorge, that 9-year fight included working on a ballot measure campaign in Hood River County, as well as organizing a statewide coalition that we had to keep together for the long haul. We had to work together for 9 years. And in order to have a large, diverse group of groups kind of all aimed in the same direction for that long, there's a lot of compromise, right? And I have a long list of small examples, but the bottom line is when it comes to tactics and strategies, sometimes, some groups would do things on their own that were different than what the larger group wanted to do. And oftentimes we would adjust the overarching strategy based on what the group wanted and achieving some consensus, which ended up being some kind of compromise. An example of an area where we did not compromise is also in there, right? We decided there was no correct way to bottle water in Cascade Locks and in the gorge, and we never did compromise on that overall value. And
Thank you very much.
That's my time.
Thank you. We are on to question number 4. If elected, you will be managing an organization with significant staff. What is your experience with this? Ms. DeGraw.
So my experience has predominantly been, as I mentioned earlier, as the Northwest organizer with Food and Water Watch, where I was a one-person office for a large 2-state region. That said, I was essentially the executive director for that 2-state region. I had to make the decisions about which issues to prioritize and had to manage a large group of volunteers and coordinate numerous coalitions and was the leader of a few of them. And I've also been at a very high level in election campaigns, including the GMO labeling ballot measure. I was on the steering committee. And I also know what I don't know, and I know to surround myself with really qualified, smart people that will give me good advice to make me an effective leader. I think that that's a really important aspect of a leader, is to be able to be humble and ask for help when they need it, and to, like I said, know what they don't know, and be able to hit the ground running and learn really fast, which I think is also something my career has demonstrated I'm very capable of doing. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Wolf.
Thank you. Leadership, to me, means a collective coming together that makes leadership successful. It's not just one person. There's many different roles that go into an organization, small roles with more responsibilities, and this is the best example I can come up with right now as I think of ammunition. There's somebody who is helping you strategize and give you the ammunition so that you're prepared in your battle. You have people working with you as a team to give you advice, to work together, to collaborate on resolving issues. And in my experience in the Community Oversight and Advisory Board, COAB, As chairperson of that committee, there's been multiple occasions where people have come together and worked through difficult situations. And also in my leadership as part of the Portland Commission on Disabilities here, I've worked with people in, even if we've disagreed on certain topics, that we have worked together, and my time has run out, but thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Fish.
You know, I'm glad the students from Central Catholic are here because our form of government actually violates almost every basic principle of civics that they have been learning about separation of powers, because we are uniquely a form of government where commissioners serve as legislators, executive, and judicial functions all in one. So let me tell you a little bit about my experience before I was elected and then since I've had the honor of being on the council. I was a partner in a number of law firms, and in that role I was involved in hiring and firing and doing strategic planning and, yes, paying business license fees. I was also the chair of a number of nonprofit organizations, which is an invaluable experience. Since I have been in office, I have been the commissioner in charge of a number of bureaus. I created the Portland Housing Bureau. I was in charge of the Parks Bureau when it was named the best managed bureau, the best managed Parks Bureau in the country. And for the last 5 years, I've had the honor of leading the city's utilities. We serve over 1 million people in the region. It's incredibly complicated work, and it's been a great learning experience.
Thank you. Question number 5. Portland's Climate Action Plan includes ambitious goals for reducing our fossil fuel emissions. What would you do to achieve these goals? Mr. Fish, you go first.
I think it's Philip if we're rotating, but I'll be happy to go first.
I think we did a random sampling here, so.
Okay, yep.
it's
So
different.
thank you for the question about the Climate Action Plan. I was proud to vote on an update to the plan. I've also supported a very ambitious goal of getting to a clean energy future by 2050, and we're taking other bold steps at City Hall. Here are some of the things we need to do. We need to get dirty diesel off our streets. We need to, once and for all, adopt either California or Washington standards, because dirty diesel is literally killing our community. We need to accelerate the timeline of moving to a clean energy future. That means shifting to electric cars and vehicles. We need to change our culture. We are currently over-reliant on automobiles, and cars are literally choking our community. We need to create 20-minute communities where people don't have to rely on their car and can walk to a store, a school, and the other services they need. We need to get people to ride their bikes safely, which is why we have a bike master plan and we're investing a lot of new resources. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Mr. Wolf, I'll give you a minute to would you like a minute to drink some water?
Oh, no, I'm fine, thank you.
Okay,
I'm
Mr.
ready
Wolf.
to answer the question.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Thank you. Yes, I absolutely agree with Nick Fish. I am very supportive of eliminating fossil fuel dependency and taking a more green approach. I am agreeing with him on the solutions that he had mentioned, and I also believe that we should focus on improving our bus system here in the Portland metro area. I think that they should also be electric. The emissions from public transportation are also an issue. Will that change the whole culture? No. I do believe that eventually that there will be an evolution of sorts, and I want to encourage that to go in a healthier direction for our community. I do know that the project for the freeway expansion, that's $500 million, is a detriment to the city. I do believe that will increase congestion. It will not decrease emissions. It will cause more issues and take us away from the path of going green in the city. Another issue with the electric vehicles is that the batteries, it's a concern of the life of the batteries.
Thank you very much, Ms. DeGraw.
Sorry, the interpreter just needed to finish interpreting what he said.
Thank you. That's fine. I appreciate that.
All right, so The city, I was really proud of the city for passing the 100% renewables resolution. It is absolutely the right thing to do. I want to make sure that we're looking at every single decision the city makes through that lens, right? How are we going to meet that just transition if we aren't funding it and if we aren't, looking at that in all the decisions we make? So I do support the just transition as well. Hopefully we'll be voting on that soon. We also, I found it really disappointing that weeks after passing the 100% renewables resolution, the city voted to expand the freeways. That's really not a step in that right direction in terms of meeting those renewable goals. And I think we need leaders who are going to stand strong on this 100% renewables and a just transition. I also support creating a regional air quality authority because we really didn't get what we needed from the state, and Portlanders are suffering every day with some of the worst air quality of any major city in the United States of America. So I really support shifting that. I know that we have some support from Ted Wheeler and the county on that as well. And I just want to add that I, of course, agree that we need to adopt Washington or California standards on diesel. That is one of the worst air quality problems we have in the city.
Thank you. Question number 6. What will be the challenges to working in City Hall and with the other commissioners, and how will you handle these challenges? Mr. Wolf.
Well, in my experience and my campaign thus far, I've been campaigning since August until now. I have experienced many barriers and frustrations regarding accessibility and transparency of the campaign. And to be honest, I do believe that there has been discrimination, oppression, and barriers intentionally placed, which has negatively affected my ability to campaign successfully. Taking that to a city hall, what I can see improving is only if the city takes more accountability in ensuring equality and equity for a fair campaign. To be more transparent is essential. And I also believe that 5 representatives is not enough. It doesn't represent the diversity of our communities here in the city. And I think that there should be representatives from each area, each neighborhood, so that people feel represented. There's a lot of talk, but there's no action. That needs to change. City Hall needs to find a healthier balance in order to address these issues within the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Fish.
Thank you very much. Well, the question was, what are the challenges? I'd like to reframe it as, what are the opportunities? Because our form of government has some unique advantages. You get to tap the creativity and passion of 5 different individuals who must work together if we're going to move the city forward. And I've had the great honor of serving with people who were very creative and very dedicated. The secret of success in City Hall, though, is building strong partnerships. It's getting up every day thinking about, what do my colleagues care about and how can I help them be successful? And then when you have an idea, it's trying to build a broad base of support. There used to be an old adage that you could do anything in City Hall with 3 votes. And I actually think that's the wrong approach to the job. I think the goal should be 5 votes. Because when you engage everyone on the council, what you're doing is improving legislation and building a bigger tent for what you're trying to do. I'm very proud to serve on a council with very interesting and creative people, and might bring a kind of a collaborative leadership to the table.
Thank you. Ms. DeGraw.
Could you repeat the question? I just want to make sure.
Yes. What will be the challenges to working in City Hall and with the other commissioners, and how will you handle these challenges?
So I kind of agree that this should be an opportunity situation rather than a challenges situation. I am very excited about bringing a strong voice to City Hall that's willing to shine a really bright light on what is and what is not working under the current system. And I'm running on a campaign of shining a really bright light on what is and is not working in the current system, which is why it is abundantly clear to me that by most measures, the average Portlander's lives have not gotten better over the last 10 years. years. Rents are skyrocketing. Cost of living is going through the roof. This leadership in this form of government was slow to respond and slow to find a sense of urgency on this. And this is why I am eager to get in there and work alongside, especially some of the new folks who have been elected onto council, to shift into a new direction and to build a broad coalition so that we can, as we approach this charter review process that starts in 2020, we can really start looking at how do we form a government that serves the people of the city and starts getting the long-term planning that we deserve.
Thank you. I will read one more question from our prepared questions, and then I have some very interesting questions here from the audience, so we'll try to take at least one of those before we go into closing statements. Question number 7. What is the Commission's role in improving wealth equity? Ms. DeGraw.
I think that the Commission plays a really important role in ensuring that there's more wealth equity throughout the city. And I think part of the reason why we have such a broad gap of inequality is because of a lack of representation and a set of policies that has really led to displacement of folks in this city further and further east, and in some cases out of the city, right? Right now, if you were to look at a map of the county and you split it in half at 82nd Avenue, east of 82nd Avenue would be one of the poorest counties in the nation and one of the poorest counties in the state of Oregon. And I think we need a city council that has representation from that area of the city so that we can get some real leadership there and maybe start prioritizing their needs. There's a lot of blaming that often happens under this current form of government, and I really think that if we had a more representative system and more participation from communities, that we could really start getting the policies that help raise the bar for working people in the city, all over the city. Thank you.
Mr. Fish.
Well, it's really a fundamental question about what kind of community we want to be. Do we want to become a city like San Francisco where there is this sharp divide between rich and poor? Or do we want to be a city that welcomes working class and middle class families? Now, there's a number of things that we can do at the council. We have to have some humility because we don't control huge macroeconomic forces. But let's talk about some of the ways we can reduce these inequities. First of all, we can invest in areas that have been historically underinvested, like inner northeast and outer southeast. We can help people achieve the dream of home ownership that have historically been shut out, first because of race, and now because of the cost. We can promote family wage jobs and insist that in all construction jobs, people be able to support themselves and not do a race to the bottom. We can support robust community benefit agreements so every major construction project produces benefits for our community. And we should relentlessly make sure that women-owned and minority small businesses get a fair share of the pie in all of our work.
Thank you. Mr. Wolf.
City Hall and City Council is underrepresented, as I had mentioned before. I've been involved with City Hall for over 10 years now, and I see the same story, that they focus on racial justice, but it seems to exclude disabilities, and that's important that those two terms be put together, that work be done collaboratively. And City Hall has $200,000 for security. That's the amount that they spend. That divides us. I believe that should be abolished, because this does not give voice to somebody who is disempowered and disenfranchised. So I disagree with how we approach people within the community, how we treat people. I believe everyone deserves an equal voice and an equal opportunity to be heard, to have their needs met. That there should be more protections in place for our community members. The laws we have established currently really hurt the people in our community. People who are houseless, face police sweeps and discrimination by the police. So those are some issues that I would like to address. Thank you.
Thank you. Here's a question. We have many questions from the audience, and I would like to read them all, but we can't. A question from the audience. Why don't we already have municipal broadband?
Who's starting?
Who would like to take that first? We'll go with Mr. Wolf first.
Yes, this is a very important issue for us all to discuss and resolve, related to net neutrality. I have informed the mayor in several meetings that we've had about the importance of this, and I have suggested that the City Hall take over part of that responsibility to have Wi-Fi free and accessible for people in the downtown area. I also believe that these larger companies should be regulated, such as Comcast and some of those other larger internet providers be regulated to ensure that everyone be able to access the internet freely or at an affordable cost. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fish.
The city has taken a strong position on net neutrality for a long time. The legislature has just moved to, in effect, implement net neutrality in connection with any public resources. So any public investments must be coupled with net neutrality. And of course, Senator Wyden is our champion in Washington, trying to overturn a terrible ruling by the FCC. Locally, municipal broadband is back in the conversation for all the obvious reasons. I would certainly support a feasibility study to examine what would it cost and on what timeline. Some of the numbers I've heard are pretty big, and so a question that I would have with the community is, what is your current set of priorities? Do we invest in addressing homelessness now, affordable housing and safe streets, or do we also find the resources for municipal broadband?
Thank you. Ms. DeGraw.
So yes, this is definitely one of those issues where if you are looking for work, if you are a student, if you are seeking services, access to the internet is a crucial aspect of being able to do so. And frankly, access to the internet has become an equity issue. And the folks who lack access tend to be low income. Often English is not their first language. A lot of them are immigrants. And we need to absolutely be prioritizing providing municipal broadband to all of Portland, because it will keep money in our economy instead of sending it out millions and millions of dollars to these massive ISPs. We can create jobs to lay the lines so that we can actually provide this service to folks. And it pays itself off because it's a utility. People can pay far less money for this public utility and pay down the bond money and give everyone access to affordable, high quality internet. This is the only thing stopping us from doing it is political will. I wish we could have gotten a feasibility study out of the county and the city, but it hasn't happened yet. But I definitely intend to work on this campaign and beyond.
Thank you. We will conclude now with a 1-minute closing statement from each candidate, beginning with Ms. DeGraw.
All right, so yeah, thanks again, everyone, for coming out today. You can view a lot more of my stances on issues and get much more extensive than these 1-minute answers by visiting my website, www.julia4pdx.com. I also have some really good recent press on a lot of these issues I'm talking about. The basic rights and social services tax will help raise revenue from those who are benefiting the most from this booming economy, so we can find some additional funds to keep our community centers open and invest in our communities and start getting out of this scarcity mindset that we're all existing in right now. It is time to have a representative form of government. We will get elected officials if we shift how we run the city, who will actually think beyond their election timelines and creating real visionary change for our city. If we can have an honest conversation about shifting toward representative form of democracy, having more participation, and I really look forward to working with all of you on creating that Portland together. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Fish.
I want to thank the League for inviting us and for all the great work you do in our community. Nearly 60 years ago, John F. Kennedy said that change is the law of life, and those who only look to the past or the present will miss the future. I've laid out a positive vision for Portland's future, a future where we continue to stand up for Portland values and honor all voices in our community. I am proud of the broad and diverse community coalition that is standing with me. Former Governor Barbara Roberts, Basic Rights Oregon Equality PAC, OLCV, Sierra Club, and Bob Salinger, Portland's teachers and firefighters and janitors, Israel Baer and Susan Emmons, Avell Gordley and former mayors Bud Clark and Tom Potter, and my colleague, Commissioner Amanda Fritz. Working together, we can meet the challenges facing our city. On May 15th, I'd be honored to have your vote. Thank you very much.
No, thank you. Excuse me for interrupting. Mr. Wolf.
Thank you, League of Women Voters, for organizing this event and having me here. Thank you, everyone, for coming here tonight and for listening to us. I know our time is limited. I don't have the luxury of going into detail or in depth about all of my platforms, but you can find my information online. It's philipforportland2018.com. My information on my background is there, my qualifications, and also my goals for the city. All that information is listed on my website, so feel free to take a look at that. And of course, you can email me, and I can answer any questions you may have. I strongly believe that I am the right candidate for this position. I believe it's my time to seize an opportunity to step in and cause a rumble, to make some change here in the city of Portland. And one thing that I want to leave you with is that I believe personal donations can be an issue. People who are wealthy, who fund campaigns, now put people like myself in a compromising position who don't accept campaign funds in that manner. So that's also an issue I just wanted to leave you with. Thank you very much for having me tonight.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming, and to our panelists. That's all the time we have tonight for this panel. We will now have a short break before the next panel for Portland Commissioner Position 3. We thank the candidates for participating. We thank the Interfaith Alliance on Poverty for co-sponsoring, and Metro East Community Media for recording. Please check, may I have a moment, please? Please check our website, lwvpdx.org, to view all our forums and for TV replay information. For more primary information, pick up our nonpartisan voter's guide at your local public library or at New Seasons Market.
And I also wanted to thank the lead for providing accessibility with the interpreters tonight. Thank you so much for doing that.
You're very welcome. Election Day is May 15th. As in all Oregon elections, you will receive a mail-in ballot. Ballots must be mailed back early or delivered to an official drop-off site anywhere in Oregon no later than 8 p.m. on Tuesday, May 15th. Postmarks don't count. Don't forget to vote. Good night.